The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq are coming up to major levels of resistance, and both indexes are overbought according to RSI. This leads me to believe that markets will likely move lower, especially given we're seeing massive greed throughout the market right now. You add it all up, it seems as if markets are likely to move lower over this coming week. I'll break down my thesis for this move lower, and I'll cover the following stocks and give a price prediction for each. I'll cover Meta, Tesla, NVDA, AMD, Disney, Upstart, Palantir, RIOT, Mara, MANU, and SoundHound AI. So with that being said, let's talk about it here. So for the SPY, we're coming off the test resistance at around 451, which is also where shares had topped out in Wednesday's session. It's also where shares had topped out in Friday's session. This is also where the index had topped out on September 14th. It's also where we saw the index top out on August 10th. It's roughly where we saw the index top out in early September as well. So I believe this level will act as resistance once again for this index. Also, as I said, the S&P 500 is overbought according to RSI right now, which should lead to a move lower for the S&P 500. So from a technical standpoint, the S&P 500 is pointing to more downside. And then we have a similar setup within the QQQs, within the NASDAQ, within the tech sector. We're coming off the test resistance at around $387, which is where the index topped out on Wednesday's trading session. It's also where we topped out in July of this year. So, major levels of resistance for this index, also similar to the S&P 500, were overbought according to RSI, which leads me to believe that over the coming trading days, for these two indexes, which will obviously move the broader market lower. And this is all occurring as we're seeing greed throughout the market. So the market over the past couple months has been, neutral to fearful. So now that we're in a greedy standpoint, I do believe that kind of sets up for a drop lower, just because everyone is feeling greedy. All investors are feeling greedy right now. And we can see that the put to call ratio is at 0.8 right now, which signifies extreme greed. We haven't seen it this low since July. And then obviously we had that drop over the coming months. So, given we're signaling extreme greed in terms of puts and calls, I believe we see a move lower for the stock market based on all of those factors. And with that being said, let's take a look at Meta stock here. So Meta had been performing pretty well. It's been outperforming the broader market since all the way back in January. So, for the entire year, the stock has been an outperformer. We're above all daily moving averages, and we have a major support level at $325. So my price prediction for Meta here is going to be that we're likely going to fall with the broader market, but we will only fall down to $325, and then we'll hold that level for the rest of the week, likely stagnate around that level, and get a slight bounce off of this major support level. So I think we'll come down to this level, slightly bounce, and kind of consolidate around 330 to end the week. So I think Meta still does pretty well this week. And then with that being said, let's take a look at Tesla. So Tesla's a stock that has underperformed the broader market. We actually rejected resistance at around $240, which is where the stock had bottomed out in September. It's also where the stock had bottomed out in June. Past support acts as new resistance. And we saw that happen on Wednesday's trading session. And we moved lower over the next two trading days. Now we close below the 150-day moving average. I believe we see a move lower at least down to the 200-day moving average at around $220. And we also could break below that and come down to support. But if you were, playing puts or whatever it may be, I would say, a quick move lower to 221 would be very high confidence for me. And then with that being said, let's take a look at NVIDIA here. So NVIDIA is another stock that has been outperforming for the entire year. It's actually outperformed the broader market since November of last year. So massive outperforming stock. We're above all daily moving averages, but we actually had a signal of bearish momentum earlier this month. We had the 50-day moving average cross below the 100-day moving average, which is a signal of bearish momentum. And we haven't had this happen since... So the last time this 50-day moving average was below the The 100-day moving average was in December of this year. So almost a full year since that's happened. I believe that signals bearish momentum, and we'll get a move lower from NVIDIA. How low do we go is the question. I would say a very high confidence move would be a move back down to support at around $480, which is where we saw the stock top out in July in the past. And in October, past resistance acts as new support. So I believe this 480 level, we could see somewhat of a bounce for NVIDIA off of this level. Over the next couple of weeks, I wouldn't be shocked if we came down to the 100-day moving average at around $450. But high confidence move in the short term, I think we come down to 480 for NVIDIA. And then let's take a look at AMD here. So AMD, obviously reported better than expected earnings, has been moving higher ever since, but unfortunately we're overbought according to RSI. Therefore, I believe we see somewhat of a rejection around this level, which is actually roughly where shares had topped out in July of this year, is right where we topped out earlier this week. I believe we see this level act as resistance for the stock, and we see a move down to support at 110 for AMD here. So thinking AMD comes down to 110, and then we probably see a move higher for this outperforming stock over the coming weeks. Really just calling downside on a lot of these stocks just based on what the next week. And then let's take a look at Disney. So Disney is back up above all daily moving averages for the first time since April of this year. The company reported better than expected earnings. We saw almost a double bottom off of this $79 support level. The $79 support level is very crucial because it's actually where the stock had bottomed out in 2020. Practically flat over the past 3 years. I think this company has a lot of catching up to do, and I think over the next couple of months we'll see it move higher for Disney. But in this coming week, I think we probably move back down to support at around $90, which is where shares had topped out in July and roughly in August, where shares bottomed in March. And obviously, past resistance acts as new support. I believe this $90 level will hold for the stock, but similar to other names that we're talking about here today, we're overbought according to RSI, which should lead to some downside for this stock. And then Upstart here, one of my favorite shorts in the market right now, one of my favorite stocks to kind of play the downside over the coming days. So we're coming out to test resistance at around $25, which is where shares had bottomed in October, in September, and it's where we saw some consolidation in September. In May, and it's where we topped out in February as well. So past support acts as new resistance. I believe we see this level act as resistance, and we get a move lower over the coming trading days for this stock. Also, we just had the 50-day moving average cross below the 200-day moving average on November 10th, which is known as a death cross and implies bearish momentum. Therefore, I believe we see a move lower over the coming weeks. The next major level of support is at around $14. What I would really say is a high confidence move is we probably get a move down to $21, $22 pretty quickly to start the week for Upstart. That's kind of my high confidence price prediction for Upstart going into this week. And then let's take a look at Palantir here. So Palantir has been performing very well, obviously moving higher since earnings on the 2nd. But similar story to a lot of these stocks that we're talking about here today. We are overbought according to RSI, and we're coming up to test resistance at around $20, which is where shares had topped out in July. So I think we're probably going to move lower off of this level, and we move down to $19 pretty quickly for this stock. I think over the coming week, we could probably get a larger move lower, but I'm really just making high confidence calls right now. So I think we get a move down to 19, 18.50 for this upcoming week. And then for RIOT platform, obviously Bitcoin's been performing very well, and that's really helped the stock. But believe it or not, the stock is still underperforming the broader market. We've underperformed the broader market since September. And unfortunately, I think that underperformance likely continues for this stock. I think we see a move down to about $9.50. So we've had a ton of trouble breaking through this $10.50 resistance level. And this is where shares had topped out consistently in October and September. So I believe this level likely acts as resistance once again, and we get a move lower, below all daily moving averages at around $9.50. Also, we have a bearish momentum signal. We had the 50-day moving average cross below the 200-day moving average on October 20th, which is known as a death cross and implies bearish momentum. So you add it all up, I think this stock likely moves lower over the coming week. And then similar story for Mara, except we've had issues breaking through this 200-day moving average. So we use this 200-day moving average as resistance 5 times in the past month or so. And we also use it as resistance in early October. So I believe this 200-day moving average continues to act as resistance for the stock. And we see a move lower down to the 50-day moving average at around $9 over this coming week. And similar story to RIOT here, we had the 50-day moving average cross below the 200-day moving average on October 20th, which is known as a death cross and implies bearish momentum. So you add it all up, I think this stock is likely to move lower over the coming week. And then let's take a look at Manchester. So Manchester is coming back up to test its 100-day moving average, which is actually where the stock had rejected and moved lower on September 5th. I believe we see another rejection for this company, but it is worth noting that we get earnings on Monday, and that will really have a huge factor in what the company does. But from a technical standpoint, I believe we see a move lower down to the 50-day moving average at around $18.80 for this stock, which has underperformed the broader market since August of this year. Also, we have that death cross, that signal of bearish momentum that signaled on the 25th, or excuse me, the 21st of September. So thinking Manchester here, or excuse me, Manchester moves lower off of this 100-day moving average. And then SOUN AI, so covered this one on the channel a lot. So we've been underperforming the broader market since July, since really C3 AI has fallen out of favor. We've seen SOUN AI and a couple of smaller cap AI companies kind of follow suit. And now that we're coming up to test the 100-day moving average at around $2.30, I believe we see a move lower down to support at around $1.80, which is the next really major level of support is where shares had bottomed in August. So I think we come down to the support level. Given that the stock is almost overbought according to RSI, we have an RSI about 65. RSI is overbought at 70, so we're definitely getting there for this company. So I believe this stock continues to underperform the market, and we move down to support at around $1.80 for SOUN AI. So with that being said, covered a lot in today's video. If you enjoyed this video, if you got something from it, please leave a like and subscribe. Helps out the channel a bunch, and I'll see you here next time.